Welcome to the News in Motion podcast. Over the next several months leading up to the midterm elections, Gail will focus most of her podcasts on equipping and educating voters and encouraging people to register to vote. Gail is also available to serve as a community speaker on voting and civic engagement. If you are interested in working with her, email Gail at newsinmotionwithgail@gmail.com to schedule her today. If you're a candidate and would like to join Gail for a segment or submit your advertisement to be aired for a fee, email newsinmotionwithgail@gmail.com. Now for today's podcast.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Gail Dudley. In today's podcast, I want to continue the conversation from last week talking about volunteerism when it comes to volunteer recruitment, retention, and readiness. Today, I want to focus on readiness. And if it's okay with you, I want to jump right in and I want to call this our strategy. And hey, since we haven't done this in a moment, I thought we would do this now as well. We haven't really put out a mimosa recipe in a long time. So if you just have some regular champagne, probably not dry, if you can get away with that, especially if you're looking at brunch time or late morning, and get you some mango juice. And that's all. I'm going to make it so simple for you today. So grab you some mango juice, whether that's frozen. Make sure it's 100% juice. You want to stay away from concentrate. But get you some mango juice and add it to some champagne and sit back with your computer, your laptop, your desktop, your smartphone, your tablet, and take some notes here because I want to really dive in and as we're having this discussion. So I'm going to give you a moment. I know you're probably in your kitchen somewhere. The students are home. Your children are home. If you have children, they're probably playing around outside, or I don't know, they could be just on the computer, or maybe they're out biking or skateboarding or in the pool or whatever it may be. So hopefully you have some time to sit down and write this out. There's so much going on. We think about Highland Park and Robert Cremo, the shooter who at this broadcast have killed 7 people, and I believe it's 25 to 30 or more who have been wounded. We have the gentleman in Allen, Kentucky, who barricaded himself inside his home and shot and killed 3 police officers and shot 3 others. And then we also have in the midst of this, Jalen Walker out of Akron, Ohio, who the police shot more than 90 times, and 60 of those bullets went into that 25-year-old Black male, and he died. So a lot's going on. So we hear a lot about campaigns. We hear a lot about protests. We hear a lot about political movements, nonprofits, nonprofit organization, etc. And I think this is the prime time to talk about mobilizing, communicating, organizing, grassroots or local or state or federal, whatever that looks like. And because I've been in this business for close to 30 something years, I think it may be about a little over 30 years, I felt it only right to share my expertise along with what I do when it comes to media, written, as well as stream lives and print, where I talk politics and news and voting. This fits right in with this. This is my background, volunteerism. As many of you may have heard from the previous podcast, I was a director of training and staff development for a nonprofit organization that included board development. And we did a lot of board development teaching for corporations, and I wrote those curriculums. And then we did a lot of corporate volunteer recruitment to get those individuals matched up to go into their area, whether that was advocacy or political or community service, food bank, maybe you're on the phone bank or whatever it may be, protests and so forth. So we did all of that development. Myself and my team put all those curriculums together and we distribute them out across the US. So I've been in this field for a long time and I decided to pull this back into the fold of what I'm doing. So again, I want to talk about strategy now that you have your mimosa, and trust me, I have mine as well. Hello, somebody. I want to talk about strategy, and I want to talk about the campaigns, protests, political strategy, nonprofit organization strategy, your local strategy, a church or faith movement strategy, grassroots organizing, whatever that is. So I want to look at today volunteer readiness. I want to focus on readiness. The last podcast I talked about recruitment. If you did not get a chance to listen to that, I would encourage you to listen to it. So I want to talk about 5 areas when it comes to volunteer readiness. So this is the strategy around volunteer readiness. First of all, you have to build a solid volunteer position description. You cannot go into this without a position description. I don't care if you have 3 sentences on it or 3 bullet points. You have to have a frame of reference of the type of person that you're looking for, the characteristics that you want this position to display. Do they need to have a good personality? Do they need to be a forward thinker? Do they need to be, are they your first point of contact when someone make a call? Are these the individual people who are fundraising for you? Or is this the person who a possible donor will contact? Are they prepared? Which I'll get to that in point 5 in a moment when I talk about training. But you have to build a solid volunteer position description. It has to be solid, y'all. It does. This is something that when someone's inquiring about a position, you pull it out. You also, as I went over last week, you're going to have more than one position. You're going to have that social media volunteer person. You're going to have that marketing PR volunteer person. You're going to have that treasurer fundraiser or friend raising, as some may call it, friend raising, but volunteer position. You may even have a position for an attorney on your board. You may have advisory team, so you want all of them to have a position description. You may have a board of directors, so you want all of them to have a volunteer position. Let me just put a pin in this just for a moment. And I see already I'll be doing another one around this, which I have no problem doing this. And by the way, you can reach out to me. I am still serving as a consultant with nonprofit organizations, grassroots organizations, political campaigns, faith community campaigns, anything like that. I'm still I've just completed a contract what was about a month or 2 ago. So I'm still doing this work. So you don't have to just wait for the podcast because I really don't share everything here. I give you as much information as possible. But if you want one-on-one and you want an assessment conducted and all of these pieces and parts put into place, you can contact me. My information is going to be in the description, but hey, if you got a pen and paper, it's info, INFO, the # Gail Dudley, GAIL, D as in David, U, D as in David, LEY @gmail.com. Send me an email and say, hey, I want to speak with you, thinking about consulting, and I will follow up. But with that said, with a board, every person on your board has a position. Y'all stop just stacking your board with people. You have to be strategic. What's your strategy? You need that administrative person. You need that person who's able to look at some of your non-disclosure agreements or contracts or The waivers. I talked about waivers last week. You want an attorney on the board who knows how to do this. You want an accountant to deal with the fundraising piece of it, the donor relation piece of it. You want someone who's a connector in the community. You want them on your board. You have to be strategic about who you want on your board. I'll do that podcast at a later time. So when you're talking about building a solid volunteer position description, you have to have the framework and the mindset of who are we? That's your vision and your mission statement. What's your mission? Well, your volunteer position description should line up with your mission. What is your vision? What are you looking for? What age group? Now, hear me. Who are you serving? Let's talk about background checks. If you're serving children, do you need people on the board who can do background checks? Do you need volunteers who can do background checks? And do your volunteers need to have a background check? Hello, somebody. These are things that we're so quick. What's happening in our society today, it is so fast-paced that we're not thinking about all of these strategic pieces and of the puzzle to put it together. We're just rushing out doing something. That's why I suggested last week's podcast, and I'm suggesting today that we need to take the time to put our plan in place so that when you're ready to hit the ground running, you have it and you can go. You can go straight forward, straight with it. Don't wait until the time. Do it now. So number one, build a solid volunteer position description. Number two, when we're talking about volunteer readiness, you want to post a position. I know today is a little different, but you can post volunteer positions on Indeed. You can post volunteer positions on LinkedIn. You can post them on Facebook and Instagram. You can do a TikTok or Snapchat. You can post them on Twitter. You can post it on your website. Whatever it is, post the position description. Yes, you want to also find people who have a passion and a heart behind your mission and vision, which that needs to be solid. Please hear me. So number three, you want to interview. This is all under volunteer readiness. I know we talked about a little bit of this last week's podcast on volunteer recruitment, but so there's some overlap, but you want to interview. Some of the questions on the interview would be, well, what are you passionate about? That's one of the questions. What makes your heart sing? That's another question. And yes, that lines in the passion, but I can have a passion. I'm passionate about some things, but what makes my heart sing is politics. So I can be passionate about prayer and intercession, but what makes my heart sing? Politics. Voter education and registration. That is what makes my heart sing. So other questions. What time of the day are you available? How many hours per month can you give to this volunteer opportunity? Are you able to lift 25 pounds or more? And the reason I say that, when you're out protesting or campaigning, you have a lot of literature. And so can you lift the boxes? Can you lift it? So you want to just put that out there. What is that like? Can you lift it? Can you walk up and down the steps? Can you walk up and down hills and driveways? How far can you walk? There were some protests during the George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. The protests, people were walking, let's say in Atlanta, Georgia. They were walking anywhere from 5, 6, 7 miles. So you want to find out from your people, how far can they walk? How far can they journey? Because maybe that particular position isn't right for them, but maybe you have another volunteer position that is. So you want to be very open about everything that's going on. And that all goes into building that solid position description. You want to identify as much as possible. Like there's walking involved. There's knocking on doors that are involved. It's calling different people that's involved. It's passing out literature. It's unpacking boxes. It's packing boxes. It's whatever. It's packing food. It's carrying cases of water. Whatever that is, all of that is in that solid volunteer position description. But when you're interviewing, you're asking these questions. You're asking the questions. Don't skimp on interviewing volunteers. Volunteer interview should be no different than a job position interview, because you can fire volunteers. Thought I'd put that out there again. And then number 4, you want to select the people. You want to select who's going to be a part of your team. And that's where a good background check comes in as well. And if you don't do a background check, like fingerprinting or something like that, you want to do vetting. You do. You see what's happening today, vet your people, vet them. You really want to vet the people. So then we get to number 5, and this is where we're going to use our remaining time. You want to train your volunteers. Yes, I cannot stress this enough. If you want a well-oiled machine, if you will, I don't really like that term, so let me find something else to say. If you want all the pieces and parts together, you want to make sure, and this is what I call the onboarding process. You want to train them. You want to train them on your communication strategy. Yeah, nonprofit, whether you're nonprofit, a political campaign, organizing, collaborative, grassroots, mobilization, whatever, nonprofit, local, federal, state, whatever. You want to have a communication strategy. You also want to have a communications protocol. You do. What words are you going to use? So you need to have a clear mission and a clear vision statement. Your mission statement should be no more than 25 words. So 25 words or less is your mission statement. Your vision statement, you can expand upon that. But everyone that is a volunteer of yours, a worker of yours, anything, they should know your mission. That's why it should be 25 words or less. It should be very succinct. So you want to have that clear mission. You want to have that vision statement. What is your vision statement? You also want to have a case statement. All of this is in the training of your volunteers, because even though you may not have this particular volunteer raising funds, they may be connected to some people who can help you raise even $5 a person. $5 a person. We all know that President Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, excuse me, he was raising money from the $1, $2, 50 cent, whatever, and he was raising money on that level that was turning into millions. That works. His ground game for fundraising was phenomenal, and I actually teach a class on that. I am a graduate of CPL, that's Center for Progressive Leadership. And I attended that because I wanted to understand his ground game, and the person who actually put that together for him was one of our leaders, and it was phenomenal. You want to learn how to do that seriously, how to raise that $1 per person, $5 per person, whatever that is. So in your training, although that person may not be a volunteer doing that particular work, they may have connections, and you may want them to speak with people, because everyone you're bringing into what it is that you're doing, they should also be a supporter, whether it's someone $1, 50 cents, $5, or $500. And this is all a part of your training. It's not like we want to hold back things from our volunteers. So you want to talk about your communication strategy, your communication protocol. You want to talk about your case statement, and that case statement deals with the fundraising aspect of it. You want to talk about your budget in this training, so that your volunteers have an idea of what it is that is needed to see this organization, this political campaign, this nonprofit, this organizing collaborative, whatever it may be. You want them to get a fresh perspective of who you are, what you do, and what you need. Again, write this down: who you are, what you do, and what you need. I will say that again: who you are, what you do, and what you need. You want your volunteers to know all of those things about you. That's how they become more involved. So who you are, what you do, and what you need. So don't miss that. You want them to get a full picture about your organization. Again, who you are, what you do, and what you need. And then the duties. Train the people on what it is. Even if it's putting in data into a computer system. They may say, "Oh, I'm great with Excel," or "I'm great with Pages," or "I'm great with numbers," whatever type of computer program they're saying they're great with. But there's still a way you want them to capture that information, to capture those numbers, and how you want them to save that file. So there should still be training on that with an IT person, if you have one within your organization, or someone based upon that mission, that vision, and what it is that you do. Again, y'all, this is all onboarding. So, readiness. You want to prepare your volunteers. You don't want them to have questions about anything. So, let's go back to that communications strategy. How are you going to communicate? Is it by mobile phone? Do you have an app that you use that everybody has a login password for it? Do they have access to that? Who do they connect with? What time should they upload reports? That communications strategy it has to be tight. I see I'm gonna have to do a podcast on that as well. But y'all, this is what's happening. The reason I'm focused on volunteers right now when it comes to your campaigns, protests, political organizing, mobilization, nonprofit, whether it's local, state, federal, city, township, whatever, there's a lot of moving parts right now. There's a lot of moving parts right now. People are needing to get information out. For example, in Ohio, there is an election in August. The majority of the people, I would say right about 68% of eligible voters have no idea that there is an election in August. And it all centered around the maps. So the court kept throwing out the maps, and the election for May was already up. It's ready to go. So they still did that election. Well, because the maps weren't ready, now there's an August election. So imagine political campaigns. Imagine political candidates. How are they going to get the word out? Volunteer recruitment is key. It is key. You just can't call your mom and them. No. And I said it like that. That's what we say in the Black community, mom and them. That's just our slang. I'm just having fun. Just chill. I know what I'm talking about. Keep going. I just put that out there. But you just can't rely on the same people over and over and over again. Build a volunteer base and make sure your volunteers, there's a volunteer readiness component to make sure your volunteers are ready to do the job and they can jump in. You should already know, if you're in need of volunteers, you should already know how many volunteers you need, what exactly you need them to do, and why you need them to do it. Seriously. I'll go back to what I said a moment. Who you are, what you do, and what you need. You should already know what type of volunteers you're looking for. That should already be on the forefront of your mind. If you don't know that, a one-on-one strategy session is something I would truly encourage that you get. It doesn't have to be with me, but sit down with somebody and have an honest strategy session. Again, there's so many moving parts right now. There's so much that's happening right now that is extremely, extremely important for you to have volunteers who are ready to do the work. I don't care what we do with our smartphones. literature drop campaigns for elections are still number one. Phone calls or phone banks, still number two. And for all of you organizations that are out there that are thinking about how many more people you need to do phone banking, make sure you help your volunteers block their number. That's a major thing right now. It's major. There are a lot of apps that are available. There are a lot of scripts. Have your script written. This is volunteer readiness. This goes with the training. Have your script written. What do you want them to say? If they're completing postcards, we talked about this in the podcast last week. Have the script already written. What do you want them to duplicate onto the postcards? That becomes a part of your communication strategy. And the reason I'm dropping this to you like I'm dropping it is because I'm wanting you, I desire you to see that all of these pieces of the puzzle creates the entire framework of what it is that you're doing. You cannot do this separate. Can't be a piece here and a piece there. It has to be collective. Someone called in last week, and I'll share this. They sent me an email last week from a church. And they said, listen to your podcast. Thank you so much. We have a problem in our church. Our church is located in Alabama, and we currently have over 7,000 congregants. Somehow we fall short of preparing our volunteers to do the job. We have volunteers who are in the choir. We have volunteers who are on the doorpost. We have volunteers who take people to their seats. We have volunteers to greet people outside the front door. We have parking lot volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers, but somehow we continuously fall short. People don't know what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, or how they are to do it. Thank you for your podcast. We'll be calling you to have you come out if you are available. But in the meantime, as you're sharing your podcast, please do not forget the churches. We're in desperate need. And I want to just, as I end this podcast today, I want to respond to that. And if you ever have any questions, send them in. I will always answer them the next podcast that I have. So to the churches, you should really have a hired position as a volunteer coordinator. Those are real positions. You should have a volunteer position, volunteer coordinator position, a paid position on your staff there. But within that position, that person would have to look at the entire framework of the church. Sunday school teachers, trustees, board of directors, because those are all, at least they should be all volunteer positions. Parking lot attendants. You may have some paid security. We got that. You may even have some paid parking lot attendants, like the supervisor or whatnot. I get that as well. You also want to have your volunteers who are visiting those who are sick. You want to have the volunteers who are your prayer intercessors and your prayer team. You want to have your chaplain. I'm sure you have some paid positions, but there are also some that are non-paid. You want your pastoral volunteers, and these are the volunteers who help maybe cook meals for the family, something like that. People who are different caretakers. You have different volunteers, so you have a database that holds all of these position descriptions. I'm back to every position, every volunteer position must have a solid volunteer position description. That saves you the headache, people. That saves you the headache. You want them in the onboarding experience. Once you have posted the position, interviewed the position, and selected the person, you want to have them on an onboarding experience, and that's the training. Listen, that training should be no different than your employee training. So that training may be a week's orientation. Or since they're volunteers and they can't give you 5 hours a day for a week, maybe you turn it into a 3-week orientation with maybe a Saturday or a Friday afternoon or Wednesday while you're having Bible study or something like that. Have the training at that same time simultaneously. So you are training your church volunteers. The other thing, when you have that, you also have your children's church volunteers. All of those individuals need to have fingerprint as well as a background check. All of them. I don't care if you do know them. Make sure they have those things done. These things are critical. They're absolutely important. So this particular church, they've already sent me their assessment, and I've already been asking them a ton of questions of things they need to do so that we can pinpoint how to build out their volunteer department, because their challenge has been there's been so much turnover, and they have a new pastor over the past 2 years, and that happened during COVID, that things are falling through the cracks. So they're needing someone to come in to help them formalize that and put that together. So I just wanted to share just a piece of that to say you're not exempt. And there's so many different components that you have to pull together when you're talking about volunteerism. And then the other thing I want to talk about with volunteer readiness, and I'm off of here, is how are you going to celebrate your volunteers? We all celebrate our donors because we're trying to keep them. But how do you celebrate your volunteers? Do you offer them a t-shirt for their volunteer experience? Do you offer them other merch, whether it's a water bottle or whatnot? Do you do a shout out for all your volunteers? What do you do? Do you give them discounts on things that you may be participating in? What do you do for your volunteers? Do you have a volunteer banquet? Do you have a volunteer fellowship time? Do you supply food? I recall I was on contract with this organizing collaborative, and we had, during a political time, this was general election, we had what you call souls to the polls. And churches came after church to the main election spot in Franklin County here in Columbus, Ohio. And there were lines of people. If you go to any of my social media, look back to that time. Probably it was in late October. I think it was the last Sunday in October, right before the elections. You'll see just tons of people. They were standing in line 3-4 hours, I believe. It started to snow that day. And I was on contract trying to help organize, trying to help keep the lines, making sure people had the ID that they needed. And there were all of us who were trained to do certain things. And I was a consultant, so I was training people, helping them put everything together. Well, after church, I knew they're probably hungry, because Black churches stay in church forever and a day. We do. And we love it. Don't be mad at us. We love it. We love it. We love it. We love it. So, in doing so, I knew, well, people are probably hungry, because they were coming over on their church vans, everything. And it was cold. It was cold. It started snowing. It was cold. The wind was blowing. And I said, okay, what can we do? Well, I went through my Rolodex, my contacts. I contacted a major pizza company. And I know it's pizza, but I was trying to think what's easy that people could stand in line with a plate or a napkin, hold it, whatever. So the pizzas were delivered. I mean, a lot of boxes of large pizzas, a lot. I can't tell you how many thousands of people were in line. And so we were like, well, how are we going to get the pizza to them? Well, we had volunteers who were there. And we were already doing some other things. They were already doing the lit drop from a distance, because once you got to a certain point, they couldn't have any of those things. You can't even be up front giving any of that information, and candidates could not be up there as well. Again, that's a part of the training, that you let them know you have to be so many feet apart. If a person can't get out of a car, what do you do? This is all a part of the training, people. And I would love to come and be your consultant, do the facilitation training for you of anything like this, because I can tell you, so many people forget the training piece. That's the readiness piece of volunteerism. So I started thinking, and I said, okay, we did this at the last minute to get all these pizzas because we realized people had been in line already 1, 2, some of them 3 hours. They're hungry. They've been in church for at least 2, 3 hours. They're hungry. So when the pizzas were delivered, excuse me, I gathered some volunteers. I said, I know this isn't the job that you were here to do, but I believe people are hungry. I have, I don't know, 500 boxes or so of pizzas. Would you mind taking napkins? You had to have your gloves on because we were still in COVID, y'all. We were in COVID, early on COVID. Gloves on. You can't touch the pizza. Give them napkins. They can grab the napkin. They can grab a plate or whatever. Open up the box of pizza. Let them take what they want and then go to the next person. People were like, yes, we'll do it. So the boxes started being distributed, but we had to control the boxes. We couldn't just take the box and let them go down the line because that was breaking COVID protocol. So you have to also think about the protocols that you have and what's happening at this particular time and doing what's best. So you also have to have some flexibility when it comes to doing your ground game, whatever ground game that is. And in this case, it was mobilizing, it was voter. They were in line to cast their ballot, early voting, souls to the polls. They were coming from churches. We knew they were hungry. I knew who I could call to get 500 large pizzas free. Okay, free. That was their donation. That was their contribution. But once they came there, we had to strategize to think, how do we make this happen so that we're not breaking COVID protocols? I share that with you to say there has to be flexibility, but the strategy always has to be there. So you're always thinking ahead before you do the job. Our thinking ahead was, let's leave these boxes of pizzas right here on these tables, and let's figure out the best way to do this. We didn't just say, hey, pizza, come over here and get it. That's not strategy. We had to hold on to them. And as a team, not as one person, but as a team, think through the strategy. All right, y'all, that's volunteer readiness. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Again, I'm available. And summertime is the best time to do this, especially if you're talking about doing something when it comes to political campaigning, even when it talks about food insecurity, protests, nonprofit organizing, organizing collaboratives, whatever. Tap into people who know. Okay. And if I'm not available, I have a list of people who I can connect you with. All right, y'all. This has been the News in Motion podcast. This is the NIM podcast. We had those mimosas today. I want you to let me know how those mango mimosas were working out for you today. All right, y'all. Until next week, I am Gail Dudley. You know what I say, everyone. Stay well. And remember, make some bold moves.
Catch Gail each weekday on News in Motion on Facebook Live at facebook.com/newsinmotion or her YouTube at youtube.com/GailDudley. You can also follow Gail on Instagram and Twitter at Gail Dudley and visit her website, www.GailDudley.com. Until next week, as Gail always signs off, stay well and remember to make some moves.